Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is well. Everybody's doing good since the last time we spoke. I am slowly seeing a spike in numbers ever since I started this podcast and the new mission that I've been on. And I am super thankful, even though it's a slow burn. I know and I believe wholeheartedly that this will grow into something more. And I am excited for what comes next. So, to those of you, the almost 100 people that subscribed to my channel, the people that have been downloading the podcast, I'm seeing the numbers constantly go up every single time I look at the numbers. Like, wow, y'all actually listening to me. Uh oh. I'm happy about it and I'm grateful. I got my notes in front of me, so if you're watching visually, you will see me looking up and down a little bit because I want to stay on track on the episode. That's the only reason why, but we will be doing things slightly different this episode. Normally, I do things in an essay form, but this one is a lot more personal. I figured we could just feel it out and let it, be what it is. And however people receive it is however people receive it. I'm grateful that you're here all the same. So thank you for being here and watching what I got going on. So the reason why I say this episode is a little bit different because I feel like it wouldn't be quote unquote the open soul podcast if I didn't keep things open and honest about where I am right now. I've been an R&B artist for up to 15 years and I'm finally in a space where I look at that identity and that person and I think, wow, you had a lot of work to do on yourself. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to sit here and act like that's not the case. But the more time went by, the more I realized how much my appetite for it has drastically changed. The things that I've seen and experienced, the things that have kept me stagnant along with me keeping myself stagnant, the things that I've seen in regards to myself that I didn't know beforehand, that I'm now in a safe enough space to be able to speak on it openly and honestly, after spending enough time alone, after like all the storms and things that have happened, or at least come and pass. Some of them still kind of going on, but it is what it is, For a long time, I felt like music was the only way my voice could be heard. I spent years performing, writing, collaborating, the whole nine when it comes down to being a music artist. Really trying to build something in the music industry. But the more time went by and the more healing I did, the more work I did on myself, the more I realized a lot more about myself in the process. That the version of me that the industry requires is versions of me that I've already outgrown. So in this video, I just want to talk about my journey with music and what I learned from it and why my relationship with it has changed. But yeah, like I said, I've been, doing this for quite some time. And I want to make clear that, it's not an attack on the music industry. It really isn't. Everyone's experience is different. These are my personal realizations, and I still have love and respect, most of all for the people that I have worked with. So I want to say that I started when I was 16, and I'm 32 now, so that's a while. And I'm finally in a safe enough space to move myself into a different space. My intention was to create music that was intentional, not manufacture energetically damaging work. Around 2012 and 2013, I made a promise to myself that I was going to make music. And if I was going to make music, it had to mean something. What I'm noticing over time is that the reality of the environment I was in, the industry runs heavily on image culture. There's a constant level of comparison that happens, a lot of competitive energy that pushes people to keep proving themselves over and over and over again. A lot of the attention goes towards applause, validation, and how things appear on the surface. It's nothing about the internal, unless you've positioned yourself for that. But it isn't always about that. And when you're in that kind of environment long enough, you start to realize that people aren't always showing up as their real selves. There's a lot of social performance involved, and people presenting versions of themselves that they feel will be accepted or rewarded. At a certain point, I had to be honest with myself and acknowledge something I was seeing. And a lot of what the industry rewards is performance, being performative, not necessarily authenticity. And when I realized that, it started to change how I viewed and looked at the music industry altogether. Now, this is just like a couple pieces of why, but I'm giving you the meat and potatoes of the why and where I am in my life right now. Over time, I started to notice even more so the personal cost of being in this kind of environment. I found myself overgiving and neglecting my own needs, constantly trying to prove my value. And that kind of pressure is really not good on you or your body. That's like a buildup of disaster waiting to happen. And really, when that started to happen for me, that's when the joy of everything started to get sucked out of the whole thing. Like, I love music. I'll say it until I'm gone and out of this world. I love music a lot. But the joy in it, due to the politics, started to suck all of that out. The politics really just sucked the joy out of the process for me. And with that, like a whole nother layer to this is like growing up, like there was this thing about being silent and quiet. So it's like if you had feelings about anything, if you were upset about something, vulnerable in any capacity, feelings were just something that was not on the table, especially if you were a child, especially in my household growing up. And that's not a dig at my family. It's just the reality of how I grew up. That's what I remember. That's what my siblings remember. We all went through it. Or at least the siblings that I grew up with, because I have 5 siblings and I lived with up to 3. But for the majority of my life, I lived with 2 siblings. As a child, it was almost like you weren't supposed to talk about how you felt, because the idea was that you hadn't earned the right to have feelings yet. So very early on, I learned that vulnerability wasn't always safe. I learned that sharing how I felt could easily be dismissed, ignored, or used against me. Because of that, I developed a habit of being quiet about certain things, not because I didn't understand my feelings. I always knew how to process how I felt. I processed a lot of heavy feelings, like for as far back as I can remember, 11 years old. Heavy things that I don't think any 11-year-old should have to process, but it's the truth of my story, But because I became very selective about who I trusted with that part of me, if someone showed me that they weren't emotionally safe, I simply wouldn't give them access to any kind of my vulnerabilities. That's just the truth. I think that would be how anybody would move if it was somebody they didn't trust, For a long time, music became the one place where I could actually express those emotions freely. It felt like the only space I could be honest about what I was feeling without worrying about whether someone would dismiss it, So with that, I realized that within the industry, I had fallen into like a pattern of performing and overextending myself just to be acknowledged. And when you're constantly giving more of yourself, hoping that eventually it will come back to you, that can really take a toll on you mentally, emotionally, and physically. So that was the moment I started facing the fact that as much as I wanted it to be, music nor the music industry was a safe space for me anymore. Eventually. It was just too much about, competition and less about creating. The more and more closer I got to things, or the more I felt like I was getting to a breakthrough, the more like it just felt like I have to perform and bleed a little bit more just to hold the spot. And if you weren't one of the ones that were handpicked, then it was like, like, it was just like, what am I overextending all this energy for if it's like gonna be like a matter of fact, like, you're really great, but it's just like, yo, I just gave you my whole Lifetime movie worth of my business. Like, what you mean? So that thing just gets so daunting after a while. And it's like, yeah, some people are like, well, that's what happens when you, like, if you don't know the story, you don't know the story. Don't even assume me. If you don't know the full story, don't even try to assume me. But, that's just where I stand with it. And the more I see it happening in the environment around me, the more I realize, okay, maybe I've kind of lost a taste for it. Maybe there is a world outside of this that I could be putting more of my energy into, In 2023, I started using TikTok a lot more heavily. People have been telling me for years that I have like the personality for it, but I didn't really start taking it seriously until that year. Like, I would use it here and there, but it wasn't nothing serious. It wasn't hitting on nothing, for real. And if you know me, you know I'm a very humorous person. Like, if you know me personally, you know I don't take a lot serious. Like, if I could laugh about something, I'ma laugh. I've always been a big fan of artists who evolve over time. One artist in particular who has always inspired me is Andre 3000. Around that time, he had released a meditation style album. It wasn't a rap album. It didn't have the kind of lyrics that people were expecting, or let alone lyrics at all. It was more instrumental, more reflective, and something that clearly came from where he was in his personal life and his personal growth. Reactions were split up. You had one half where they really enjoyed it. I was on this half, or this end of the spectrum, where we appreciated where he is and where he has arrived, how he has arrived. It might not translate to everybody the same way, but we appreciated what he did because it just shows that he's somewhere else right now. The other half didn't really like it. There were a lot of negative things that were said because they wanted a rap album. They wanted the version of Andre 3000 that they were used to. And I remember one comment in particular that really had me, had my wheels turning. And he said, Andre 3000, F your F and Flu album, which I felt like it was completely out of pocket. Like, if you don't like it, what you listening to it for? Like, what are we doing? And I decided to stitch the video. And so little old me decided to stitch, and I basically said something along the lines of, if you don't like what you're hearing, change the effing channel. Why put yourself in a situation you already know you don't enjoy? So what, you don't like it? There are plenty of people who do. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean everybody else has to agree with you. Or doesn't mean anybody really does agree with you. Granted, you can have your own opinion, but change the channel, buddy. And that was it. That was literally the video. Just me speaking for maybe 2 minutes or less. But that video ended up getting over 7,000 likes and eventually reached over 80,000 views. And it's still pinned to my page to this day because I'm still in disbelief. Like, what? What shocked me most was that I didn't do anything special. I didn't perform. I didn't put on a show. I didn't exhaust myself trying to entertain people. I just spoke because it helped me realize that my voice alone, just by speaking, is enough. Not that I didn't have to work anymore or that I could just sit back and do nothing, but it showed me that I didn't have to perform to exhaustion just to be heard. I could simply tell the truth. And if people resonated with it, they resonated with it. And if they didn't, that was okay too. But the voice still mattered, That moment really changed how I understood my role as a creator. It also changed how I felt in my body because performing for years had often left me anxious, nervous about my clothes, my hair, my makeup, the performance, the audience. Sometimes I pushed myself until I could barely talk afterwards. My body would be tense, my mind is always racing, and I wouldn't fully relax until literally the next day. But here I was just picking up my phone and telling the truth, like I'm doing now. And because of how powerful the response was, that's when I realized something important. When something is truly meant for you, it shouldn't constantly require you to overextend yourself just to make it work. There should be a certain level of flow to it. And that moment on TikTok was one of the first real examples I'd ever experienced at. So, between 2021 and 2024, my life went through an intense period of change. And a lot of things started revealing themselves, like the environments that I was in, the people that I trusted, and the way people began to act when things started to heat up for me musically. It was a strange place to be in, especially because I didn't have a team around me. Helping me carry the weight, basically. A lot of it felt like I was navigating everything alone while trying to still keep everything moving forward, if you will. During that time, I was giving so much of my energy to music, to life, and to the people around me that I completely neglected myself. Sad, but very true. I remember hearing something from Bishop T.D. Jakes that really stuck with me. He said, "Don't neglect yourself for the sake of the gift." Because when you do that, it ends up showing up in your life and in your body in ways that you really can't ignore no more. And I had to face the reality that I had been doing exactly that. I was pouring into everything and everyone while barely making space to take care of myself. There was a period where I was like so overwhelmed by everything happening in my life that I slipped into what I call my I give up era. Not because I didn't believe in my gift, but because I was carrying so much pain and betrayal and so many unprocessed emotions that I didn't know where to put them. Those years between 2021 and 2024 were the darkest years of my life. But in the middle of all that, towards the end of that period, some other stuff started sprouting up, more positive things, I began meeting people who actually cared about my well-being in a real way. People who would sit with me, pray with me, talk with me, pray for me, and really pour into me, which basically reminded me that I still had value even when I couldn't see it in myself anymore. That kind of care pushed me to confront something that I didn't really know in my earlier years, that it pretty much showed me how much I was not caring for myself, and also how many environments I had been in where care was surface level, but the deeper level of support that I needed wasn't all the way there. This isn't to say that there was no one to help me along the way. This isn't to say that nobody spoke into me. At that time, if I'm sitting here saying that nobody ever helped me, I'm sitting here bold-faced lying, and that I will not do. What I will say and what I am saying is the kind of soul care I was looking for that didn't have an agenda attached to it is what it specifically was missing for me. It also showed me something about the industry. When people see you as an image, they stop seeing you as a human being. They start treating you like the image and not the person behind it. There's an expectation that talent is supposed to show up perfectly, always perform, always deliver. Like, you're not allowed to have any kind of bad day. You can't have any kind of struggles or moments where you are just a human fucking being, or just anything that gives space for real life. but you're still required to show up. You're still required to handle your end of the bargain. You're still required. It's like required times 50 million. And there's no room for any mess up. You know what I'm saying? So as soon as you have a human moment, you automatically become a liability. Again, does that mean that I was not wrong for things, or that there were decisions that I could have made that would have made a situation better? Absolutely not. I'm saying on specific situations where there could have been some type of grace, or I'm saying that majority of the time, when it's time to be human, you are not seen as human. You are seen as an object. The reality is that artists are still people, you know. They still feel things. We go through life. And when you're in an environment where people see you more as an opportunity, a symbol or an object instead of a person, it becomes very easy to lose yourself trying to live up to expectations that were never really fair for you in the first place. That was the biggest realization, or turning point for me rather, because it forced me to zoom out and take a step back, take time away, and start learning how to take care of myself again, not just as an artist, but as a human being. I didn't have a lot of people around me that was saying, MYEA, take a break, or MYEA, make room to take care of yourself, or where it didn't feel like, let me see how good you're doing just so I can do my thing. You know, it didn't feel like it was a genuine, how are you doing? And that's when, again, I realized that you may love the music and you might love the music industry, but that thing does not love you back. So you may as well start learning how to take care of yourself and love yourself the way you should be or the way you should have been in the first place.